is a document out there.
I will let you back, Dave and Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a little confused. Perhaps you can enlighten me.
Sorry, Pete.
Oh, sorry,
I would let Dave back first, and then yourself, Peter, because we just need to funnel this at the moment, so we can try to bring it to a sort of point.
Thank you very much. Some of you may actually know that one of the roles I have on this district council is the members champion of community engagement. I would love to be part of that conversation with how we're actually going to engage with our communities and district and the parish and town councils. But can we see if we can move away from the idea that Zoom is the only way to go? In a room like this, where we have, I don't know, a couple of dozen people, we can have an open and transparent conversation. You can't always on a Zoom meeting. And what we're talking about is actually very, very important things for the development of this district over the next 10 to 20 years, which is why we're looking at the GNLP going on a long time. Let's take it that we need to do better. And we have to do better for our residents, for our parish and town councils. And just recently, there's been a consultation that's gone out to the parish and town councils, which has been awful. And we have to stop this. So take Zoom off the table, start having discussions with members properly, start having discussions with parish and town councils properly. And when it comes to the shortfalls that obviously I mentioned earlier, these have been going on for before I was elected. And I think some of these projects are 7 or 8 years old. These are not just fundamental flaws of 8 years ago. These are things that are actually actively going on now. And it's not through want of officers trying. I've seen paper chains of officers begging developers to actually contact parish councils, and they just aren't, because they see, in some cases, they see parish and town councils as walkovers. And we're not. We're statutory consultees, and we are there to bring things into our community. If we need to build play areas and the developer won't, that's where the 106 agreements and the SIL can actually come in. If we can't negotiate those at the very start, parish and town councils, in my experience, often think, why bother? It's a done deal. We'll see what we've got at the end of it and do what we can. Quite frankly, some of the things that are being said here are nowhere near going far enough, and nowhere near even sticking to the principles we've actually got in our documents. And unless there's actually a fundamental change of actually how we're viewing parish and town councils from this district council at all levels, then we are going to have serious issues with how we're going to deliver services moving forward. And planning is one of those very, very important issues, because they affect the parish and town councils. And if especially on these big developments, they have to know more. Like, as an example, as a question for you, if 1,000 homes was being built, how much formal recreation space would need to be offered? Can we have on a document a calculation or an approximate calculation of what must be delivered for the amount of houses? Because it shouldn't be that difficult to add in there. Just saying in a box, may be delivered off-site or may be delivered on-site. If the parish and town councils know that a development of 500 homes will provide approximately 2 hectares of space, then they'll be able to say, oh, where can we identify these 2 hectares of space? And you can do that from day one, not from having the 106 agreement already drawn out and then parish and town councils being told they must accept it as is. So just another point. Thank you.
I think what's actually going on at the moment is that I'm a parish councillor. I'm also a vice chair as well. Been around for years, a parish councillor. And I know that there are other parishes that experienced the same problem going back years. I remember Tony Adams at a full council meeting going back 7 years, raising it at a full council meeting. Exactly the same problem. Developer not consulting properly, open space, move in, did not get what they wanted, the consultation never took place. Raised it at an open council meeting. So the issue that Sprelson's raising is actually about all of that, as I've read it, and about proper documentation to have clarity procedurally And there are important points that Dave's raising here that are directly connected. So just want to say that I'm recognising it. And before we move on, we'll come back on some of those points because I think there is something opening up here that's positive, Helen, that we can come back to. Peter, far away.
I should be brief, Chairman, you'll be pleased to know. Helen, could you just clarify exactly where we are in this discussion, because I'm a little confused. We're being asked to recommend, we have two recommendations. The suggestion has been that the training course might not be the most suitable way forward, and that a more robust document might be. Does such a document exist? If not, can we do one?
We have an overarching document, which is a statement of community involvement, which says how we engage with the community on all aspects of planning. What we're saying in the recommendation is it would be helpful to have as Stuart has said, as a recommendation, in addition to what's already in the report, we could actually summarise that. So it's actually very highlighted, actually, what is expected, how we engage with you, and how we want to work with you. I want to say, actually, working with town and parish councils is really important at all stages of the planning process, through the plan making, through to the planning application. We are introducing, as Stuart said, you may not have picked it up in his presentation, that as part of all majors coming in, we are going to have a meeting with the local members in the parish to say, we've got this application in, what does it mean in planning terms? What does it mean in policy terms? So we engage with you early doors before you make your comments. That's something we want to do on all our majors coming forward. With respect to our proposal to actually engage with a session with the town and parish council to say, this is what is expected, this is how we want to engage with you, this is what you can expect through your policies or the council's policies. And I think it's a really good point that Councillor King has made with respect to making it really clear on this scale of development would attract this amount of open space on or off the site. I think we do need to review and actually update some of the town and parish councils where we are with existing 106s. They are a legal document. They are the requirement, the development that the council's already agreed. And actually, what does that mean and how can we make that happen? And how can we spend that money, or how can you spend that money that's in that 106 to secure the off-site requirements or on-site requirements? So that's what we're offering. I think it's really important. I think there are really good examples of how we do and already engage with you through our major developments, and actually making sure you have a voice on that.
I think the answer to the question was yes then.
Sorry, I took the liberty of just clarifying some of the other points. Could you
perhaps then, or one of the officers, amend the recommendation to take that point on board? Because I think that would then satisfy the
We're not quite there yet, Peter.
Sorry?
We're not quite there yet,
Oh,
Peter.
what a shame.
Anyone else? And Sue, and then Ken.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do think there's consultation with parish and town councils, but you'll be unsurprised to hear that I'm also a parish councillor and was chair of the parish council. We also have had issues, and I think part of the problem I think we're missing in this is once the development has been put together and the planning application is almost ready to go through, it's sometimes too late. Sometimes it would be more beneficial if we were consulting the town and parish councils prior to the developer actually putting in some plans. And that would be my main point. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Ken.
Thank you, Chairman. If I listen to all the conversation that's been going on here, it seems as though every development is a horror story. Nonsense. I have to say, we've got in Taverham 1,400 houses that are going up. And we say there's no consultation. Let me tell you, from our perspective as district councillors, we've had about 4 meetings. We've been on site with the developer. There's been meetings with all the parish. They've had lots of interface with it. We've come up with plans for, play areas, for actually moving the village parish offices into it. So it's not all horror stories. So, let's not look at this, because the general public, listen to this, would think every development is an absolute disaster. It's not. Now, we get to the bit of where, yes, let's have a big document so parish councillors can read that, and that'll cover everything. Excuse me, hundreds of pages of documents for a brand new parish councillor, which we have in Taverham, is not going to make learning about the planning process any more better. The bits about training, I quite agree with Helen and with the previous officers. The fact is, you do need training. Parish councillors need training all the time in the development of what's going on and the legislation changing. We have to have training in that lot. And to say that, a piece of paper will do that, it won't. We need these young councillors because there'll be more coming up because of the age profile within parish and town councils is getting older and the new ones are coming forward. So we need these training courses, and I totally disagree that a load of document papers will get rid of all of the difficulties that we have. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Carolyn?
I would agree with Ken that Tavenham has been very lucky with the developer that they have at the moment. So they are consulting with both the parish and the district councillors. I think we do need training plus the document. Councillors do come and go. Some stay on for 30 years, but some do come and go. And to have a one-off training session, unless you have it every year for every councillor, is not going to work. You need a document as well, and a document in plain English, please.
Okie dokie. If there's no one else, could try to summarise here. Oh, Judy, I just want to say, Judy, that I'm fully aware that you're here. Wonderful that you are. I presume that you're here as portfolio holder in terms of the waste. We are here on a specific scrutiny item to do with the scrutiny committee. If you want to speak on this, could you just bear that in mind?
Yes. If I could speak, it's entirely on this topic because I'm also a parish councillor, a town councillor in Sproston. And I support the majority of what's gone before. I just got one very specific question, and it's to do with page 22, and it's to do with the fact of smaller developments which allow off-site facilities, allow them to contribute to off-site. The developer contributes to off-site facilities. But when you get several developers doing it, they now have run out of space. Is there anything in the planning policies that we could make sure that doesn't happen? It's not just the money. We've got the money. We haven't got the space.
I think that's also the point that Sproston was raising, the real point, by the way. Yes, could you want to respond to that, please?
That's where we obviously use our infrastructure policy to work with the parish to see where that could be spent. So it is a requirement. The policy does allow for the off-site commuter sum to come in lieu of it be provided on site, because not all sites will have it on site as per the local plan policies. But I do also accept that point that's been made, that obviously we need to be identifying, I think, at the planning stage where that money could almost be spent and how we could perhaps achieve that. I think that's something that we need to look into in more detail, and that's the conversation that we do have as part of the planning application. I'd just like to assure members, although you may not have had a good experience with the pre-app with the developer, because there are some that will engage with the community greater than others, and some of them will just notify them and inform them of the development and ask for comments and not actually do that wholehearted sort of public engagement. There is still an opportunity very much to make sure our policies, and they are our policies of the council and the neighbourhood plan, which are a consideration of that application, are taken into account. We actually have that negotiation with the developer. We do not have to accept something that doesn't meet our policies, as you know, when it comes to us, and we as officers cannot make a decision contrary to policy without it going to our planning committee. So we do need to work together early as the application comes in, which is why we're going to be offering a meeting with the local members and the parish as soon as those major applications come in, to actually say where we need to go on it as part of the policy requirements, which I think will help answer some of those questions that you have and you feel you can't bring as part of that application process. I think that would be something that would add value.
Thank you, Anna. It's just that particular point you raised there was really important, actually. So appreciate that, because it is that engagement, and before it gets to a planning committee as well. Those of us that are on planning committees have also been through this over the years as well. That when you get there and you get the multiple developers, if it's got to that stage prior to planning committee, that it's under consideration as well. That's already been consulted through with the town or parish. Absolutely critical point. Absolutely. And Tabor, an example, Ken, I'm well aware of that. Absolute wonderful developer you've had there. We do have them engaged properly, but there are others that don't. So this is about the process and procedure here. How can we improve that for what is a real problem? I've got no doubt that Barbara and Guy have got much better things to do than come to Broadland. So this is clearly a real issue, you know. So just trying to round this up on points that have been raised, Dave and others as well. And also sort of my own sort of perspective on this and response from Helen. Oh, did you want to come in first?
Sure, I was just going to add in before you get to your recommendations in terms of clarification from the members around the training, and I take the points in terms of how that's presented. Just in relation to the Zoom offering, as I say, we have delivered courses over the last 12 months, one in relation to development management whole and one in relation to enforcement. I think traditionally where meetings or those sessions have been facilitated in the building, such as in the council chamber, there's obviously limitations in terms of numbers who can come, and I think traditionally that has tended to be the clerks and the chairs of those meetings who've come to these meetings. I also take the point in terms of the engagement and the opportunities through Zoom versus an in-building opportunity. However, in relation to the two that we ran last year, it widened the audience to allow lots of the members from lots of the parish councils to come. And I think in relation to both those sessions, we had potentially up to 300 people on each of those sessions. So it gave a much wider audience to hear. Obviously, the opportunities for engagement tends to be through chat or other such opportunities. But it's just to put out there in terms of the forum as to how members would like that to be presented in terms of potentially getting to the widest audience possible.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Right, so just try to summarise here with the recommendation on points that I've raised and the officer's response, of course. Before I do that, could I just ask one other question? In terms of the community engagement document, which and this might make me sound very sad, but I have read many years ago, and I've read from time to time in terms of being a planning committee member. You know, other people like to go and see films. I unfortunately do this sort of thing. But in your view, could that be strengthened in terms of the engagement and consultation? We know that some developers are not doing this. Could that be strengthened in some way so there's some sort of formal letter goes out to the parish and to the developer at the same time saying, have you consulted? Tick box. And then you know if they haven't or not. So some way it could be strengthened, perhaps.
It is already outlined in our statement of community involvement how the council expects developers to engage. They also have a duty to obviously also consult on certain scale developments with the parish, and they have to indicate that as part of the application. So it is already there. Within that, we certainly do, on any advice we give, saying there is a duty for you to then consult. I think the experience we get is that could just be they consult with you by, we are about to put this application in, do you want any comments? Or they offer a public meeting. Most of them do offer a public meeting before the application is submitted. So I think it is already there. We always need to refresh and look at that, but we have recently refreshed that. But certainly we can look at it. But I think it is already there, but there's no harm in us reminding the importance of that and writing out to all our developers as an importance of that. That can be a recommendation from committee. It could be that we now write out to the other developers following today's conversation the importance that you do engage with the community as part of our statement of community involvement with all parishes, and they want to talk to you and be engaged. So we could write a letter out as a result of today's meeting to all the significant developers who we deal with to remind them of that obligation.
Thank you. And you know, the planning NPF in a way, it all refers to meaningful engagement, and that's what we're referring to, meaningful engagement.
They have to show to us they've done that. We can't obviously refuse to accept an application on the basis of that, but we can certainly publicise that as a result of today's meeting and write to them all. That'd be something we could do.
Okay. So I'm proposing that in line with Helen's concurrence. Could somebody second that? Yes, seconded. Okay. Grant, was it on that or something else?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Just following on from what Helen was saying, we were talking about teeth, and if the developer doesn't engage, what can we do to I don't know, I wouldn't want to use the word punish, but to make sure that they are in fact doing what we have agreed, or what was in the planning agreement before. So it's all very well to say, yes, this is your obligation, but what if they fail to meet that obligation, or they don't engage properly? What enforcement action is what I'm really looking for? Can we impose to get them to engage, or to even stick to the agreements that were previously in place?
That is always very difficult, and I think there is an onus that they do have to do in accordance with the NPPF to actually engage on certain scale developments before they submit it. As I said, and I'm not aware that there isn't any of our major applications that we receive that haven't had some sort of engagement with the public. As I said, that can take different forms. So I'm not aware that we have any applications that have had no public engagement before they are submitted. Is obviously that level of, and that listening to, and that understanding. But I think the important thing is, and I think probably what we need to do more of, is that part of the discussions as part of the application. The comments we receive, especially from the parish and town councils, are really important, that we then engage with you and invite you to meetings we have with the developers. That is happening more and more. And as I said, we are already going to be engaging on all my major applications and offering a meeting with you and the parish councils, with the local members, just to say, this is the application, this is what it means in accordance with policies, this is what's come forward, and have that open discussion with you early on as part of the planning process. Just on our major applications, obviously the minor ones aren't quite significant and don't bring forward things like a 106 agreement. So having those early conversations with you about how we will be dealing with it. I don't think necessarily that needs to be a recommendation, Chair, because that's something that is already in process, that we have actually started to engage with, in agreement with the portfolio holder for planning, Councillor Lawn. That's something she has agreed that we will start to engage with. And
just to clarify, to support that, you've also increased the hours of the engagement officer, I believe.
Yeah, you remember when that post had to come, the increase to the establishment by 0.5. That 0.5 of a post was to enable us to have more engagement with town and parish councils as part of the SIL and the 106 spending, because we only had a 0.6 of an officer, which we know is Sally Hoare. So we wanted to increase that for the one team, because we see that as really important. And the fact that we got that member agreement to increase our resources and to increase that discussion that we have as part of the planning process, not only on decisions that we're doing, but with 106 agreements already in place that have been there for a number of years, that actually we need to spend that money and make sure we get the right development in place and spending that money. So yes, we have already put that additional resource in, Chair.
And your intention, because it can be minutes, it doesn't have to be a recommendation, is to have, as you've just explained, and to have more engagement at that stage than previously. So Ken, and then I'll try to wrap this up.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be clear, do I understand then that it is a commitment in the agreement for the developers to contact pre-ware, and that is a commitment, and it's in the document? And may I also support that I think, pardon me, there is a case for the document, of course, but it's what is in the document and how clear it is. And I would also support that there is a need for some training. This face-to-face is very important to me, and it certainly will help to deal with getting clear of the document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ken, because it's on that point actually, which I'm trying to pull this together on. I'm going to come on to it in a moment. Sue. No, really.
Thank you,
will
Chair.
move
Just wanted to
widen this up.
point out to Helen, really, the letter that goes out to developers, if that's going to go ahead, needs to inform the developers about the time delay between when the parish and town councils receive correspondence and when they can actually look at it. And we've obviously had this same issue very recently pointed out, and I think we need to point it out again. Really, some of our parish councils don't meet only once every 2 months, so the developers need to be asked to consult very early, not at the last minute. It just does not work for parish and town councils. Thank you.
Right, so bring this to a conclusion. Well, try to get the final recommendations here. So we've already had one amended recommendation, which we've agreed. James, yes?
Yes, I haven't got the details of it. Would you like to?
Yes, what notes have you got, John?
Well, I have added that a letter will be drafted and sent to developers in the district to remind them of their obligations to engage with parish and town councils under the statement of community involvement.
With meaningful engagement, yeah, meaningful engagement.
Mm.
So, yes, proposing that, seconded, all agreed? Agreed, wonderful. So we move on now to these other two, this recommendation from the officers around offering a course within 6 months. Now, the thing about that is, if parish councillors do not want to attend that, clearly they wouldn't attend it, but at least it is there. But moving back onto the guidance document, I know when I read the report, and I was actually pleased with a number of aspects of it, and I can see that there was things in tandem in train already. But there have been a number of councillors, I'm just summarizing, I think Ken raised it, Dave's raised it, another 2 members raised it actually, that on the guidance notes, if we move forward with a recommendation for that as well, that the guidance document, rather than just close the item completely, could we amend the recommendation that you would draw up and then come back in some way, so then perhaps we can have some engagement, because that'd be actually very constructive for us to be engaged with that, and then we're all happy about it. You've got councillors singing off the same hymn sheet as yourself, the guidance notes going out then to parish and town clerks, and members, a number of us are already parish councillors, so we're well aware of the problem as well. So before I actually put that as a recommendation, just seeking a response.
Clearly, if that's what ONS would like to come back, I think the guidance notes would just be picking up on what is already within your council's agreed statement of community involvement, which tells us what we need to do, and would just be summarising that. So, I mean, we're quite happy to summarise that and give that out as part of any session that we have to the parish councils, which obviously you would be invited to as well. Just because we're picking up key aspects of what's already in our agreed document, it's for you to decide whether you need to see that or whether or not you delegate that to officers to make sure that does actually give those key highlights, because obviously an appendix to that would be the full document. So what we're trying to highlight through the training almost update session to town and parish councils is this is what's available, this is how we engage with you, and actually highlighting that in a summary form, as well as having the full document, which is obviously what's already been agreed with the council.
Yeah, and I think, but part of the issues that's been discussed here, and I know it from on the receiving end as well, we're talking about volunteers that are, you know, some of them working, there's not much time. So from the user end of it, so we can actually be quite constructive in seeing that coming forward, and we may actually be able to put forward, and I'm seeing Sprouse nod to this as well, and they did raise this in the first place. So we could be quite helpful and constructive in helping that final construction in terms of how it translates to parishes. So I think that I will put that as a recommendation, Helen, and then it could come back. And we can speed that up. Just looking at Sue here and Sue here, committee officer. We could speed that up with another recommendation in that we could come back to another full ONS, or we could actually form a small work group to speed this up a bit more of some of the ONS members, so then you can come back quicker and then they can respond quicker rather than waiting for an ONS meeting that's not scheduled for another 2 months, if that's helpful.
Chairman, we can only have one time and task panel, so you're aware we've already got that in place. Perhaps you could, I mean, would it to be emailed around or?
Well, no, sorry. When you say we can only have one time task panel, I know what's been going with COVID. I know restrictions around that. But as I know Councillor Adams is present, but we have said this in the past, we've had in the past more than one time task panel. Now, the issue about this isn't exactly a time task panel. What we're saying is this would be a prescribed, it's not a time task scrutiny exercise. This is just a task-based exercise where documents put in front of the group look at it and they go, oh, in actual fact, it would be better if you can answer it that way, end of. So it's a working sort of time and task from us, but it's not a time and task investigation, which actually takes up all kinds of officers involved in time.
Would you be able to do this perhaps just in an informal Zoom session with members? Just informally?
Dave?
Oh, Emma wants to.
Can we please find a way of not using Zoom for every little thing? In all honesty, I've said I want to take part in this as with my role of as members champion for community engagement, but Zoom does not offer the best way of actually communicating between the group, because sometimes you can't see people on the screen, you don't see hands, you don't see input. Whereas in a room like this, you do see input. So yes, I would love to take part in that group, but I would like it to be, there's a room downstairs where we can have 6 people in it. So there's absolutely no reason why we can't have 6 people in that room. So even if it's just 3 councillors and 3 officers to actually go through it, let's do that. I don't know how we can actually do that as a formal or as an informal get together. But in all honesty, I really do wish that this council as a whole would stop using the word Zoom for every little thing.
Right, Emma.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to come in on a couple of points there, I do think we have councillors that have your view, Councillor King, and we have councillors that have other view. We are simply trying to meet everybody's requirements and making sure we cover as much as possible. So Zoom will be offered, in person will be offered. We have councillors that are still very nervous about coming into the building, and I think we have a right to make sure we are aware of that. I think what you're talking about in terms of this guidance is around having some member overview, some member oversight as to what that says. I would suggest you open it wider than overview and scrutiny, so that any member that wishes to have input or into that, they can do that. And Helen and the team could offer a variety of ways for that to happen, so that all members feel that they have the opportunity to put the input in the way that they wish.
I don't know what your suggestion is, Emma. How would you do that?
Well, you would offer it to all members. You can send the guidance note round. Members could email back comments. You could have a session in the room, a drop-in session with Helen and the team, and you could offer a Zoom meeting. You're then providing different varieties for people to do that, therefore widening the democracy.
Okay, yeah, I've got that, but I'd like to step it another one. I'm going to recommend it, and I'm going to pop this proposition. Ken, I'm just going to actually ask you to be very brief, because we need to bring this to a conclusion.
A time period. I don't want to see this lingering on.
Yeah.
We need to do this, so we need to have an exact time period. I mean, if you say 4 weeks, I would think that's appropriate. Yeah. At least let's get this thing moving.
Yes. Caroline, and then you will be the last one, and I've got to move on.
Can I just clarify from my own mind that these guidance notes, are they the same as the procedural document that Barbara asked for?
This we're talking about they're the same thing, actually. Guidance notes, procedural document.
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
Okay, cheers.
Okay. So, taking on board your point, Emma, I think what we need to do is to have, from the discussion we've had today, which other members in the council have not been part of and not been involved with, etc., as an ONS function, we need a small group from this. It's a very simple task to do. Helen and her officers can draft it up. I think you've already got it in mind from what I'm hearing. Draft it up, get together in the John Mack, or get together on a Zoom. Unfortunately, Dave, 4 or 5 of us, if we agree who. You've immediately got a suggestion in terms of any amendment to then go to full the members of the entire council for then their comment as well. But at least you've had member lead input at the right stage from this overview and scrutiny committee, bearing in mind we understand the premise from Sprowston and others that have taken place today. And I think that's a fair way forward. And it takes on board your point, Emma, about wider member involvement as well. And that's a simple exercise. Then you can email that out following that. And that could be a very simple, agree with Ken, thing to do. You could meet downstairs for an hour, whatever, or on Zoom for an hour. You have the document and go through it. Is that acceptable to the committee? Yes. Do we all agree to that? And also offer the training within 6 months, as Helen said, Ken. Yes, that's the second part of that. We've all agreed, yes? Wonderful. Sprowston, sorry to call you Sprowston, but you know it's not personal. So I hope you're happy. Wait for the guidance and procedural notes, and then hopefully that moves things forward. And thanks for your attendance today and for raising the issue as well. I think with the officers, it's helped to improve things for hopefully all parishes and all residents as well, and the council. So thanks very much. And I'd now release you, and we'll move on to our next item. Thanks very much. Thanks, Helen, and Stuart. By the way, thanks very much. Right. And we'll take one more item, and then we'll move to a break before we move on to the exempt item. Hard work sometimes.
In there after the insurance item.
Yeah, that's what you said. Sorry, I did just say that. So we take one more item and then.
Oh, sorry, we've got the work programme.
Oh God, yeah. We've been in here an hour and a quarter now. I think we'll take a 10-minute break now.
Yeah, if you want one.
Yeah. We've got the work programme, then 2 other items. I can see that people actually need a 10-minute break, comfort break. So we take a 10-minute comfort break.
On your button.
You have me mic on then. I think we've still got a member missing, have we, James? No, we're all here now. Great, okey-dokey. And I did also mean to say welcome, Judy, and also Tony, our previous ONS and Vice Chair, and also Stuart Clancy. It's nice to see you here, Stuart, in person, not on Zoom. And we'll move to the next item, which is item 9, item 8. Cabinet reports. Overview and Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. Need to adjust my glasses here. Page 27, Ken. Sue, do you want to go through page by page?
I don't mind you missing me out, Chairman.
Sorry?
Okay.
Yeah.
No, right. I'll take you through quite briefly on the work programme. You'll see the top 2 items. Well, the first item is the one that we've obviously just seen. The second item on here, the provision of leisure principles and community wellbeing. You'll recall that Kerry Gallagher gave a presentation at the last meeting and was asked to come back to talk about the leisure principles. However, since then, they've looked at that material and realised that there's actually a wider scope to look at with prevention, advice and support. So that's actually coming to Cabinet in October as a much wider report. So to avoid the duplication of hearing a little bit of it now and the wider report in October, that's actually been taken off your work programme. So you'll be pre-scrutinising that before Cabinet in October. So you will see that again, but in a much wider sense. Okay, so the next item on the work programme is the engagement in public consultations. That was something that we were going to hear at this meeting, but once Cabinet moved and we ended up with a bit of a hybrid of overview and scrutiny, normal work programme and Cabinet pre-scrutiny, it felt that we had too much on the agenda. So that's been moved onto the next meeting in November. And also now, which is quite timely, we've got the new customer experience and insight lead in post. So that will give her a chance to get her feet on the ground and actually hopefully come and talk to you about engagement in public consultations. The next thing on the work programme also for November, we're going to do look at a review of the environmental strategy. So members will probably remember that we previously talked about getting the new person in post as the environmental coordinator. So looking at that in a more rounded sense, rather than just have that person in just to talk about her role, we thought it would be quite timely to look at a complete review of the environmental strategy, which has been in place for about a year. So we can do a whole review of that, which can include that person coming along to the meeting to give you an update on her role as well. So moving over the page, also in November, we've got quite a packed agenda. We've also got a review of the housing allocations policy, which was implemented in April. And it was agreed that that would be looked at again after 6 months. And a review of member grants as well, which is something that was agreed in March that we would look at again, because last time we remember it was done just before Cabinet and you didn't feel that you'd given it a good sort of pre-look. So we're going to look at that a little bit ahead of time this time. So far, we've got no items for the January meeting, but I'm sure we'll come up with something to fill that. So if you have got anything, obviously go through the normal process. In March, the only thing we've got on there so far is the annual report, which I'll prepare for that meeting. And then looking right ahead to June next year, we've got a review, which we agreed in the June meeting, a review of the empty homes policy, which was implemented in June this year. So we'll be looking at that a year later just to make sure it's doing what it's intended to do and to identify any recommendations. So moving on then, as we know, the time and task panel for staff turnover, we're still holding that, and obviously that, when it's concluded, will come back to this committee. So no date as yet for that one.
Just a quick
Yeah.
input on that. We've got another meeting which I'm going to talk about date for
Yeah.
in September. That's for the time tasks.
Yeah. Okay. An update on the apprenticeship scheme. So you'll recall that it was agreed at the March meeting that we were going to make representation to the Secretary of State in light of the detrimental effect the apprenticeships levy was having on 16 to 19-year-olds. We drafted a letter, and Steve has sent that out as the chairman. That's appended to the work programme, so you can read through that. So that's been sent off. We also, we've also still got outstanding that article for the Broadland News, which I'll just work together with Steve to just kind of finalise that. Okay. Broadband and mobile phone coverage. So James sent you out an update yesterday, which you may have seen. So that was an update, just a highlight report. We did have a note that Karen O'Kane, who was the representative on Better Broadband for Norfolk, was going to provide members with an all-member briefing. I've checked with Jo Copplestone, and Karen is actually retiring, so she thinks it would be good if, when the new person is in place, they can come and perhaps either talk to Scrutiny, or it might be better to do an all-member briefing, because obviously broadband is something that all members are quite keen on hearing about. So that at the moment is still on hold, but you do have the highlight report, so you can see the progress that's having in the district. We don't have an update from Jo Copplestone. She said there's nothing to update you on from Water Resources East. I don't know if you have got any updates from the Broads and Rivers IDB.
It has been discussed appropriately between both the Norfolk Rivers and the Broads. It's been highlighted as well because I attended Water Management East big webinar. Just as a point of of alarm to us, in the next decade we're going to be 897 cubic million litres of water, which we have not got, which we need to have for drinking. So there is big work going from Water Management East, working with Environment Agency. Basically, we need to have some reservoirs or some means of, like we have with the gas pipelines, of where we can shift water far better. Because with the way that the climate's going, that we get huge rush of water comes in. We've got no means of storing it. It all disappears, and then we get a drought. So the work is ongoing, and I'd like to say that we have good representation from both Joe and myself with Water Management East, and as and when we get more better reports. At the moment, it's very technical. I'll come back to you, and hopefully we should have some outcome, at least with our interaction with government and where they propose to go. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Ken. The last item on there is just the council partnership register review, which still is on hold. Coming down, Steve just mentioned, yes, the next time and task panel is meeting in September, just to consider some further information. And a date has been set, I understand, for the workshop, the finance workshop, to discuss the budget performance, and that's the 26th of October. So I think you've already got that on your calendars. I think Rodney advised you of that, did you? Sorry, the budget scrutiny. Yeah, so the 26th of October should be all in your diaries. And that's it for the work programme.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just looking at the work programme, and I'm just wondering, obviously we've got today's meeting, then we've got a workshop in October, And then our next meeting is in November. What's happened with us normally meeting every 2 weeks?
Chair, do you want
2
Chair?
months.
Yeah, it's 2 months. Your work program is every 2 months. About 5. It's 5 meetings a year, isn't it, Sue?
So 5 meetings a year. These are the dates that were set by full council for the committee. Obviously, you will meet to pre-scrutinise cabinet, so you will have those meetings as well. But these are the dates that were set for the overview and scrutiny work programme.
Yeah, I was looking at what is on our on the work program for the 2nd of November, which is supposed to be our next meeting. It's 4 items which are considerable, and is it not practical to have a meeting earlier in October or even in September?
Well, we've got this schedule, as I understand, it's, agreed by council. So we're a bit stuck on that. I mean, if we do a mass, then clearly we need to do something about it. But as it stands under the remit, as I see it from council, we are a bit stuck with this grant at the moment. But perhaps moving forward to council next year, we could get some flexibility in on a need basis, if needed, if required. We could perhaps amend that for the next council moving forward. Yeah. Is there anybody disagreeing with that? Another way of asking if everyone's in favour. Okay. All right, we could do that. Yeah. Brilliant. Is that all right, Grant? Okay. So, anyone else on the work programme? So,
Just a question, Chair. How or when would we be able to have scrutiny of how the working with South Norfolk Council is going for us and for the residents of Broadland? Is that something we could put on our agenda? Thank you.
yeah, I think you need to be a little bit more kind of specific and targeted, Emma.
Yeah, if that's an item that you're proposing to go on the work programme, then there's a scoping document that Sue can work through with you, so that that's really focused. It's called a topic approach, and it makes sure that you're focused on knowing what the outcomes are. So if you link in with Sue on that.
Thank you.
Yes, that's a suggestion, and then we come back to ONS to see whether we actually want to do that. Yeah, Sue? Yeah. Brilliant. Okey-doke. So anything else on the work programme? Peter?
Not on the work programme, Chairman. Can I offer my apologies? I have a meeting with Phil Coutier and Haveringham Parish Council, which, given the meeting we've just had, is obviously going to take precedence over this.
Sure.
My apologies.
And if you could just hold on for 60 seconds.
Oh, I can do that.
I've been this because it's just in terms of their previous debate. I've actually been waiting as a little test for overview and scrutineers to see if you've missed the fact that we haven't actually agreed the work group yet for our previous debate. We haven't done it. We need to do it. Nobody's mentioned it, so I'm raising it. Just while you're here, Peter, in case you wanted to be on it. So, as a proposal, we could have, say, 5, preferably. Doesn't have to be, of course. No restriction on this. Parish councillors have had some involvement around this. Some experience would be helpful, I think. So volunteers, Dave, obviously, Caroline, myself. So that's 3, Sue, 4. Anyone else? Chair of Parish Council? Sue? Yes, Sue. Okie dokie. Right. So that would be our working group, Sue. Thanks, Peter. Wonderful. Right. Next item. Good luck with Phil, Peter. engagement. Right, next item, cabinet reports, insurance contract decision award, page 24. Ken. Rodney, you're going to lead off. Welcome, Rodney, by the way.
Thank you, Chair. So it's necessary for this council to put in insurance cover to start from the 1st of October of this year. Very much our current contract is now coming up to expiry. So the approach this council has historically had, and we're proposing to continue, is very much so if there's insurable risks, then we look to obtain insurance cover to cover those risks. So actually, we're not a council that tends to self-insure our own risks. We go out to the market to get appropriate insurance cover, covering all the major risks that we face as a council. Historically, we've had a low claims history. So again, that helps ensure our premiums are at a low level. And as I say, we don't tend to self-insure. We have very low excesses wherever possible. So actually, if there's a claim, the companies will actually cover the full loss. We also ask the insurers to maintain our claim for us. So if there is a claim, it will go through that insurer to actually process that claim, to follow it up, and ultimately make sure we pay out the right amount through the insurance. So what we've done, we've carried out insurance tender jointly with South Norfolk Council. And although we've done it jointly, it does give us the flexibility to award different insurers to the two different councils. So actually, if one of the bidders was lower and a better offer for Broadland than it is for South Norfolk, we have the option to have a different insurer in place. So insurance can be quite a complex issue. There's obviously, people know from their own home and insurance, all the different clauses and exclusions potentially you can cover. So we make sure that when we went out to tender, we were supported by AJ Gallagher brokers, who are well known in this field, very much to help make sure we get the appropriate cover at the appropriate price. What we've done is we've got out for lots. So rather than saying we want to just put out a single tender for all the insurance covers for this council, we've got out based on lots. So actually this gives individual insurers the ability to bid for specific covers, specific lots that they're interested in, because there are very few, perhaps one, maybe two insurers that are interested in bidding for all the insurance covers for local authorities. As I say, that's just the way that the market works at the moment. So by doing this approach, we ended up having 6 bidders who put in various expressions of interest for various lots. And it gets quite complicated because some of the insurers will say, actually, I'll only insure you for the business interruption cover if I also win your cover for the property insurance. So that's why when you look through the evaluation, there's various caveats, as in we can only award this lot to this person because they didn't win the bigger lot for the main property insurance and things like that. So overall, we've carried out this exercise. As I say, we did have a good response. The tenders have come back and been evaluated by Gallagher's, as they very much have that expertise to understand the covers and what's been offered and any exclusions. And very much we're coming back to yourselves to ask you to actually support the proposals in the recommendations for awarding a number of the lots to various different bidders, reference between A and F to this report. I think it's worth saying that when we went out for tender, we very much looked at price and quality. Price was about 50% of the overall evaluation, but also the quality, as in, does the cover covers us for what we need, was also an important element. And in general, the bids we had back, all the quality was good. So actually, we had no real concerns about any of the bids on quality. So in many ways, it did come down to price on a number of these lots. And that's why we've ended up with a mixture of insurers, because very much that was going to give us the best value for money by actually going out and actually placing the different covers with the different insurers. Obviously, they might be concerned, well, actually, if you've got lots of different insurers, is it going to be complicated to actually start dealing with insurance claims? We're comfortable with what's being proposed because we have got a low claims history, and indeed the actual insurances are quite different. So actually, you'll have a claim potentially under a property cover. It's completely different to if you have a claim under a public liability cover. So it is quite possible to say, well, actually, this insurance will go to that insurer to deal with. I think that was all I wanted to say for that, and open the floor to questions.
Ken and then Grant. Thank you, Rodney.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I see the lots 14 to 22, Rodney. Are the costings specifically for Broadland alone, or is there an intermix because of the way the lots are? So is there any intermix with South Norfolk, or is the costings there specifically for Broadland, please?
The costings are specifically for Broadland. We have separate prices for South Norfolk, which is why we could end up with a different insurer, because actually one of the bidders could put a better bid in for the Broadland covers, and they might put a more expensive bid in for the South Norfolk covers, which is why Broadland would award it to one of the bidders and South Norfolk might award it to a different bidder.
Thank you.
There's a difference, isn't there, Rodney, 400,000 or 100,000?
Yes, and South Norfolk's cost of insurance tends to be a lot higher than Broadland's, very much because actually they've got things like leisure, refuse collections, they've got more vehicles. So actually the cost for South Norfolk is significantly more for insurance than it is for Broadland.
They've got more assets.
Yes.
Grant?
Thank you, Chairman. Rodney, if you could I ask you to just give us a little bit more detail when you talk about 50% quality, and whether that quality assurance has got something to do with inquiring about performance that other councils have experienced with those people that have, or those businesses that have been allocated as successful in your choice of who we want to go for. In other words, have you done a bit of background on their performance rather than quality? Thank you.
Right. So the main element of the quality was the cover on paragraph 4.3. This is where we set out the quality elements in cover, as in the cover being proposed, has it got any exclusions that we might not want to adopt, because all the insurers will put in slightly different exclusions and different clauses. And the other elements are service delivery and that claims handling. So this is where we evaluate their proposals. It is very difficult under procurement rule to actually penalise someone for past poor performance, because you have to evaluate them on what they're proposing to do. So even though you might have had a bad experience, or someone might have had a bad experience on the previous performance, you can only very much justify and evaluate it based on what they're saying they're going to do. There are some rules where actually you can exclude some contractors from bidding for contracts if they've been really poor. But in general, it is very difficult to mark people down because of what they've done in the past.
What I was hoping to find out was whether you'd contacted other local authorities in regard to that kind of performance, whether other authorities have had difficulties in having their claims met by some of those bidders.
No, we didn't specifically do that as part of this exercise.
All right, Grant?
Rodney, your public liability insurance, does that cover volunteers working on Broadland land?
Yes, it would. It would be, you tend to have different categories. So actually anyone working on our behalf, be it an employee or a volunteer working for ourselves, would be covered.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you. Just one thing I'm thinking about, so I might come back to you.
Yes, certainly, please do.
Yeah.
So if there's no more, just move to the recommendation. Not heard any indications around an amendment here at all, so I'll go straight to the recommendation to agree to award the following contracts for each insurance lot for a period of up to 5 years, and delegates to the Assistant Director of Finance to appoint a broker to support the insurance provision over that period. You can see the graph there as well. I'll move seconded to, again, All those in favour? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Rodney. I'll now move to item 10, exclusion of the press and public, which I'll amplify. I move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for remaining item of business, because otherwise information which is exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A and the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006, would be disclosed to them. I try to make it as interesting as I can, but there you go. I so move. Agreed? Yes, agreed.